Welcome along, one and all, to PSGL Season 37 PSF3 Round 11, brought to you by GT Omega. We now approach the conclusion on what has been a season sure to create everlasting memories. With just two more races left and the championship on a knife edge, how will the Losail International Circuit change the picture of this season? It is the Qatar Grand Prix. My name is Daka, and I will be taking you through the action tonight, as always. And alongside me, also as always, it is Ghost once again. How are you, sir?
I'm very well, thank you. It's been a busy week for me and a perfect way. Well, I say a busy week. A busy week since last Monday, I should say, because this week has only been one day so far. But it's a good way to get back into the swing of things here in Qatar. We've got Koolman fittingly at the top of the timing sheets on the left, as he is the championship leader by just 9 points after we saw his lead get slashed by Fraser and Finley last week. He himself scored 0 points in a chaotic end to the Monza Grand Prix. Here he comes around the last corner to begin our lap, and I'll let you go through it, Daka, just to make a bit of a change.
Bit of a change indeed, flicking it into turn number one, very aggressive on that turn and holding fifth gear, and now setting up turn number two. Very long flowing corners here at Qatar, for the most part very high speed, so let's see how Fraser is going to tackle that then. Flicking the car in towards turns 4 and 5 now. Exit out of here, very, very important. Setting up the end of the first sector, being in the 29s is where you want to be, and he is just about there on a 29.9, one of the slowest corners on the track at turn 6, navigating that one nicely. Then into this magnificent mid-speed to high-speed section, heading out of turn number 7, flat out through turn number 8, flicking it in to 9 as well, and opening up 10. Watch for track limits on the exit here, because that exit tends to keep on coming towards you, and you've got to be wary not to run over that white line. But Fraser, nice and clean now, going in towards that third sector. 56.8 is looking fairly solid as he heads around these couple of kinks then, 12, 13 and 14, flirting a bit with track limits, manages to get away with it into turn 15 now, super high speed through there, and now setting up that final corner, wide entry line, flick it in again, so aggressive, throwing that car in, just about keeping it within the white line. CPI Fraser well set the early benchmark. It is a 120.7, and title rival Koolman will follow suit right after that, and it goes slightly behind that, half a tenth between 1 and 2 in the standings. 20.8 for Koolman, both the championship contenders on the board going solidly, but Fleddy topping both of them then, just going a fraction quicker than Fraser.
So close out there so far between those top four. Chris Rebel back on wheel, by the way. Now it's a top 5 as Finley joins the party. Less than 700ths of a second between all of the top 5. And then a bit of a gap to Franek, Zvajdek and Predestinato. But yeah, Chris Rebel back on wheel. So expect him, as far as I'm aware anyway, expect him to be back towards the front again for the last couple rounds. But yeah, Fleddy, very nice there. One thing I noticed between Koolman and Fraser in particular was the gap in Sector 2. Koolman was some 3/10 faster than Fraser in Sector 2, and Fraser made up the rest of the time in the final sector, because their first sectors were relatively similar. So interesting differences between the two drivers. One test of a driver's confidence in this track, or what used to be, was whether they were flat through turn 15. But that's the penultimate corner, for those of you unaware. But that's not really an indicator anymore, when especially at this level of racing, because on this game it's a lot easier to do that corner flat than it used to be. So you might see some drivers do a little bit of a lift still, but yeah, it's not as easy to tell through that corner anymore, but you can definitely tell who's pushing by the times. Louis Baptiste also joins the close now top 6, as it looks like Slash back into the pits after invalidation, and Spicer, Leonardo still on outlaps. They'll be drivers to watch as well, as I'm sure they'll be close towards the front. Although we said that last week, and then the grid order was quite topsy-turvy, wasn't it, Daka?
Compared to what we're used to seeing throughout this season, certainly. But Qatar is so different. And you mentioned confidence through turn 15. I would say, in general, this is a big confidence circuit. There's so many high-speed corners. You really need to know what to expect from your car. Minimum speed through all the corners, keeping that up. Carrying the momentum all the way through, so key around this track. As we head towards, most drivers have completed their first runs. Leonardo was on an outlap, decided to bail into the pit lane at the end of it. Spicer is coming across the line now, and Spicer is one of the drivers that is still mathematically in the title fight. Well, we have a bit less action on track. I'll run you through that. You mentioned Kuhlmann, his championship lead at Monza was substantially dented after what was a pretty tumultuous Italian Grand Prix from him. Fraser took the win after that incredible comeback drive and a move on Spicer on the last lap. Finley was on the podium in that race, and those two drivers moved to within 9 and 12 points respectively of Kuhlmann's championship lead. They are the three drivers you would say who are certainly in the best position to challenge for the title, but they aren't the only three drivers that are in mathematical contention. Franek is 22 points off the lead. Probably needs to win here, or at least go very close to that to give himself a fighting chance going into the last rounds. And the other two drivers are Leonardo and Spicer, who we've just seen Spicer invalidate on his first run. Those two drivers are 31 and 34 points behind, so it must be said those two guys really need a miracle to be able to give themselves a real chance, a Kimi Räikkönen 2007-esque situation. But we've seen Kuhlmann drop a lot of points in the last round. Anything can happen, so you can't rule those guys out just yet, but it's quite an uphill battle at this stage.
Yeah, Kuhlmann's been very good at picking up pieces when things have gone wrong. We saw it at Jeddah. We've seen it at plenty other occasions. And he's just got that consistency. So Monza was a bit of a shock to the system for us as spectators, but I'm sure it was for Kuhlmann as well. That probably will have knocked his confidence quite a bit, that race, because he had a very healthy championship lead and saw it get slashed basically in half. Or worse, as he had a poor result without even scoring any points. And to be honest, throughout that race, he didn't really look like scoring points either. It was only towards the end where he got back in contention, and then it all went wrong again. So, yeah, definitely he's got to build back his confidence on what is, like you said, a very confidence-based circuit. So this is where champions are made, Daka. It's the final rounds of seasons for sure, but the penultimate rounds, I feel, are just as, if not even more important, because it defines how you approach the final race, and sometimes that can be the difference between success and failure. So Kuhlmann really needs a strong result here.
This is looking like a fairly strong lap if you keep this going. He was just down on his lap time to the first two sectors, but to be fair, his time to the first two sectors on his previous run was incredibly quick. Let's see if he's found more time in the last sector on this lap. The answer to that is yes, and emphatically so. NLR Kuhlmann goes straight to the top of the timesheets, and the man who was there just previously, Fleddy, who was up in the first two sectors himself, decides to bail out of that lap. So no further improvements for him. Same going with Fraser. He's invalidated that time, and as has Finley. And I think this is something that you will often see with Qatar. It is a confidence track, but it is also a track where you do tend to see drivers running outside of track limits because of the absolute necessity to carry minimum speed through every corner. And I think that's going to be something that's going to define the rest of this session potentially. Can these drivers keep it within the lines? Because at this circuit, that is not easy, especially when pushing to the absolute limit in these quali sessions.
Yeah, there's several tracks on the calendar that can really be given the moniker of the track limits Grand Prix. Canada is one of them. Imola this year is definitely one of them, and Qatar absolutely in that range as well. Leonardo goes to P11 on his first run, but he's not far off. The time's very close once again in PSF3. Yeah, like you say, it's all about keeping it within the lines, and especially at places like the double right-hander at the end of Sector 1, I apologize for the dog. It can be really, really tricky. You've got to push so hard through those high-speed corners, and if you just give it a little bit too much, or you sort of lose the confidence in the grip of the car, and you have to understeer a little bit, and you're straight off before you know it, and that's lap over. So, yeah, very, very tricky circuit to get spot on. Not because of the walls, but because of the white lines.
Yeah, well, you can almost treat them as walls in this qualifying session,
Yeah.
giving the cost to your progress. Of course, most of the drivers have put in fairly solid runs, but as you said, with the time so close, you're going to need to execute absolutely flawlessly to be able to eke out that little bit more. But Coolman, you'd have to say this is a very encouraging, at the moment, turn up for the books, because we have seen him at times struggling in qualifying throughout this season. He has grabbed a pole position at the first round in Silverstone, but you wouldn't say a qualifying specialist. So against guys like Fraser, who have been dominating, with 3 pole positions, Spicer, another driver who doesn't have a lap time on the board, but historically in this season a bit of a one-lap specialist too. So Koolman, the fact that he already has that lap time on the board at this stage, and everyone has got to be chasing that, that's a real good space for him to be in throughout this session, and can set him up for success in the race. Because as we were discussing actually before we went into this stream, qualifying at this track can actually be extremely crucial.
Absolutely, yeah. Because it's so difficult to get past in DRS trains. Unlike what we saw in Monza, where you had a massive DRS train for pretty much all race long, and people were overtaking and making moves up and down that train, and the train stayed intact because of how powerful the DRS was. Around here, it's so hard to make a move, and if you do try and make a move into turn 1 and you're in the middle of a DRS train, you run a real risk of falling out of the train. And, well, if everyone else ahead of you keeps it clean, once you fall out, very, very difficult to get back in. Yeah, it's very much qualifying based circuit for sure. And Coolman is going to want to be on the front row, because the top 2 places are where you want to be. Fleddy gets up there just as I say that, and Fleddy goes to P1. Look at that, a 20.6. I think it was Fraser who improved, not Freddy, or Fleddy, or maybe it was Spicer. Spicer, sorry, that's the one, Spicer. Yeah, I don't know why it looked like Fleddy had improved, but anyway, Fraser to the line. Is he improving? He is. Is it enough for pole? No, not quite. It's not even enough for the front row. Coolman only 17 thousandths off that pole, but I think as long as he is on the front row, he'll be very happy. And, at the moment, it is Coolman and Fleddy are part of the same team, so it's Constructor 1-2 for them as well, which is huge for their bid for that championship. But Franek Jashorny puts a stop to that at 20.618, and suddenly this qualifying is looking like it's wide open.
Yeah, we are seeing purple times flying onto those timesheets and going up to the top of it. Franek doing just that. 1:20.618 goes fastest. And Franek is, well, as I said, he is one of the drivers that's in with a shot at the championship. An outside chance, you'd have to say, but his point scoring ever since the Hungarian Grand Prix 6 weeks ago has been super strong all the way through, grabbing 4 podiums in the last 6 races. So Franek has put himself in a good position, but he does need to outscore Coolman at the very least by 4 points in order to keep his title chances alive. And at the moment, he's put himself in a very strong position to do so. Fraser, we did see not quite able to move up, and Finlay had a good banker lap, but Finlay, I think, has invalidated his next 3 runs. So certainly not the easiest position for him at this stage. Zetto with Leonardo, who's invalidated again. I think Sieb is heading around the last couple of corners now. Turn 16 it is. Exiting, big slide from the rear end as he tries to gather that one back up. 1:20.9 as the time goes 7th on a 1:20.815. Finds just 1/10 and goes up all those places to P7. The lap times are so close, and you mentioned the penultimate round and the pressure that it brings. In a session this close, that pressure is going to be amplified with so much on the line.
Huge pressure lap for Finley, like you say. Down there in P8, he has to find something. It's not like Monza where you can pick your way through the chaos at times. This is quite a consistent, very stable track, as it were, I think, for especially for drivers of this caliber. And Finley will know that, and he will know he has to get a lap in, or else he falls at risk of falling out of this championship battle before the final race. So yeah, a lot on his shoulders, and we'll see if he's up to the task. Plenty of drivers getting out onto their outlaps for their final runs now. Just over 2 minutes to go in this session. It's currently Frank Jashawney on pole with Fleddy and Coolman 2 and 3. Fraser alongside his main championship rival on the second row though, and this is going to be a fascinating final runs. I would say, Daka, expect a lot of invalidations as they push flat out to go for pole.
Yep, I'm singing that song as well. I expect a lot of invalidations. No slight against any of these drivers, but it is simply a consequence of pressing at the limits around this track, as we've mentioned several times already throughout this session. NLR Spicer is furthest along the track. Sieb is retired, no time to set another time. So Sieb bowing out in 7th place at the moment. Will that still be 7th by the session's end? NLR Spicer gearing it up now to kick off this flying lap. He was pole position last time out in Monza. Can he do it once again? Over the line to get things kicked off. He is just under 2/10 off that pole time. Currently P5. How much time can he find as he swings it into turn 1? You can see right out to the white line on that entry, opening up that entry as much as he can. Turn 2 now, swinging it in. So difficult to nail that turn in point. Tough traction zone in the exit too, but he is away and setting up through the kink of 3 and up towards that double right-hander. Turn 4 and turn 5. You barely have time to straighten up before flicking it in to the next right. Watch that first sector time. Is it in the 29s? It is, and it's a 29.8. That's very fast, getting it all locked up in towards turns number 6, but managing to power away, heading up towards the end of that middle sector, flicking it through at turn 7. Then it's a high speed run up towards turns 8 and 9, and now finally turn 10, one of the hardest corners on the track, again using that entry to open it up, just keeping it within the white lines on the exit. Watch that second sector time. It should be in the 56s. Is it in the 56s? Yes, it's a 0.6. That's very fast. Spicer is on a hot lap at the moment. Is it going to be another pole position for NLR Spicer? Through turn 14 now. Turn 15, trying to keep it flat out. Downshifts into 6th gear, trying to keep the revs high. Then turning up towards the final corner. The time expires. We are now looking at the clock. How many improvements are going to be found? First up, NLR Spicer. It's been a strong lap. Is it strong enough for pole? Yes, it is. Spicer goes fastest. Well, that hold with the rest of the drivers lining up to top it. No luck for Moikuli, still in 14th position at the moment. Behind that is Napple, goes to P11. Next up behind it is NLR Coolman. The championship leader goes, doesn't improve, stays in 4th place for the moment. Is the door open for some of his competitors, for some of his rivals? No, you're saying Ghost.
2, 3, 4 and 5 all invalidated. What about Louis Baptiste? 2/10 down at the moment. He comes to the line. It's looking decent. It is up to P2.
My
it's
goodness!
Identical lap time to Spicer, but he's going to go on the front row. He'll be gutted about that. But Frank Jashawney, Fleddy, Coolman and Fraser, no one could improve. Chris Rebel to P6. Big lap for him. Finley, nothing. Stays down in P9, but he's only 2 spots behind Fraser in the end, who is bumped all the way down to 7th place. And in the end, I think everyone who is in the championship battle crumbled under the pressure of those final laps. Not a single one got a lap in.
That is astonishing. Look at those timesheets. Spicer takes it away from Louis, who, oh man, that must be gutting, but he has put himself in such a strong position ahead of this Qatar Grand Prix. Louis made such a great impression in quali pace so far. Franek and Fleddy is that second row. Then Coolman, less than 600ths between the top 5. Chris Rebel comes next from Fraser. Sieb, Finley, work to do for Fraser and Finley, it must be said. Predestinato comes next in 10th, and Zviadek, Napple / Leonardo and Moikuli. Leonardo, another driver who's on the fringes of that title fight, and a session that may well you could say potentially push things out of reach for Leonardo. It's going to be a long way back, but yeah, that was quite some finale to that session. A pole time probably not as fast as I was expecting, it must be said, but so competitive. I think you can see though with all those missed laps at the end. You said all the championship contenders crumbling under the pressure. Man, these guys are really under the knife at this stage, and yeah, they are. I don't know what to say. They're just under so much pressure, and you could see the effect that it has at the end of that session.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned the poll time not being as fast as you perhaps expected. I think that's just because anyone who could have set a time as fast as you were expecting invalidated their last run. But yeah, I think the biggest stories are Fraser in seventh and Finley in ninth. They have got a lot of work to do. Kuhlmann's in, I think he was in P5 as all of this happens. Ignore all of this. The session will restart briefly. But yeah, it's a great lap from Spicer to take pole, but an exactly equally great lap from Louis Baptiste, but unfortunately just not quite enough in the end. So yeah, it's a tough session with so many people so close, and how important is that going to be as the race goes on? We'll have to wait and see. One thing I wanted to bring up, just watching this qualifying and just watching on this game in general the last few months, has been, I've noticed very different two very different driving styles. You see some drivers, or most drivers, I would say, using the standard driving style, smooth steering through the corners and keeping it smooth like you would usually see. But you just see the odd driver who absolutely chucks their steering wheel into every corner, and they sort of throw the car so that the rear end turns first, and then they go through the corner, and it's fast, but it just, I do wonder how much they wear their tires. Spicer is one of them. Just if you're ever on board with him, just keep an eye on how he chucks the car into corners. I don't know if he'll continue to do it in the race, but he was certainly doing it in quali. And yeah, you just see them as if they're throwing their wheel out the cockpit as they go towards the apex, and then they turn it back again as they're going through the corner. So yeah, it's interesting that this has arisen, because I think it's a remnant of the pre-handling patch in the early part of the game, because that's how you had to drive back then. But yeah, I think keep an eye on it, because I think we'll see a little bit of that in the race, and it's interesting to watch, I think.
I think that Qatar is a circuit that especially brings out that driving style that you mentioned, that
Mm.
throw it into the corner, just go full lock straight away. I do think that Qatar has a lot of corners, those where you can, it is feasible to use that technique on the entry and not really lose any time. Well, we've seen Spicer, as you mentioned, going fastest of all in that last session using that approach. So you can say at least over one lap, it's an unfailing technique. Now, let's talk about this race. The one of the only times where we've seen a driver drop the rest of his competitors was Fraser at Spa. And I want to bring that up here ahead of this race because Qatar is a track that has, as is the case, a long main straight with a big DRS zone. But because the rest of the track is, well, absent of DRS zones, some overtaking opportunities, but in general, just a lot of corners where gaps can potentially be opened up. Now, because of the inherent nature of this game, maybe that's not to be expected, but and I think you alluded to it in qualifying, it is more of a possibility to pull away from the rest than, say, it is at Monza, for example.
Yeah, definitely. Because at Monza, you can easily catch up to a group of cars ahead of you, even if you're not quite as fast with the raw pace. Because battles cost so much time, and having to follow other cars through those really slow chicanes in Monza after really long straights, it means you have to drive slower, and then a driver who has clean air can just full send through the chicane and easily catch 3 or 4 tenths on drivers ahead and get back in DRS. But at Qatar, because everything's so high speed, I don't think there's one low speed corner on the whole track, and it's that hairpin. I believe it's turn 6 or 7. But the rest of the track is just absolutely medium or high speed all the way through, and it's really hard if you don't have that raw pace on cars in front to stay with them. And the DRS gets you somewhere, but if you're consistently falling back to 8 or 9 tenths behind the car ahead by the end of a lap, at some point you're going to make a small mistake, and that's going to be it. And before you know it, in 5 laps you'll be 2 seconds behind.
Yeah, more of a danger at this circuit than you'd normally see in other places throughout the calendar. Just before we get into the race, I'll have a quick word for our sponsors. PSGL sponsored by GT Omega. A link to their site is in the video description. If you decide to purchase any of their products, then you can use the code PSGL at checkout for a 5% discount. We are also partnered with Sim Racing Centre, or SRC for short. If you're in need of setups or coaching on the F1 game, then SRC is just the place to look. They are also in the description down below, and there's a 10% discount on all of their products at checkout using the code PSGL. Now, let's get focused on this race. I know that you've been feeling a little down over the last few weeks because of your lack of ability to predict what tyres people are going to be starting on. Is this a track where you tend to see drivers, from what I've seen anyway, it's the drivers at the front like to go the mediums to start, and the drivers further back tend to go with the hards?
Yeah, I'd probably agree with that. I think I would expect more hards than mediums, is what I would say. Just because the gap between the tires is it's not as substantial as on some tracks, but it's still very much noticeable. And I think drivers are going to prefer to have the mediums on the second stint. But here we go.
Let's see how that's going to unfold. We have 5 lights at Qatar. And we leave the grid for the penultimate round of PSF3 Season 37. From the front of the grid, it is Spicer under pressure from Louis, who tucks in towards the slipstream. Seems had a bad start, falling to the back of the field. Louis searching, almost finds that inside line. Into turn number 1, gets a bit of a twitch. Fleddy and Franek are battling it out side by side behind. I saw an end plate flying. I'm not sure which car it came off of. Napple has gone backwards at the start. Leonardo fighting away with him, but they're a bit detached from the rest of the field. Still, Fleddy and Franek battling it out. Heading into turns 4 and 5. Fleddy getting out in front, and the field seemingly settling down a bit earlier than we see at most other circuits. Moy Cooley already with a penalty for illegal overtake. I'm not sure of the nature of that one, but Spicer does convert the pole position, and everyone else settling in without too much drama behind.
Leonardo was the debris you saw flying off. He has no front left end plate, and he's going to have to come back into the pits and replace that disastrous start for a driver who desperately needed an incredible result to stay in the championship battle. And well, that one hand he has on it is slipping off now. Slash getting passed by Moy Cooley in an unexpected point on the circuit. That's a great overtake from Moy Cooley into that slower left-hander, but like you say, Spicer from the front leads the Grand Prix from Louis, the two drivers who did identical lap times right there with each other still. Fleddy still in P3, getting past Franek at the start. Fraser making it past Chris Rebel as well. Big move for him because he's now right behind the championship leader, and Predestinato makes it 2 places lost for Chris Rebel within the first lap and a bit. But yeah, the tyres are about evenly mixed. It's about half and half hards and mediums, but it's spread fairly evenly through the grid. The top 4 on mediums, and then more hards further down from them. So going to be an interesting bit of strategy here in this race, but I don't think it'll make too much difference. The hard tyres, as long as they keep it together, they should be able to stick with the mediums, and they'll have a better run in the second stint. So Kuhlmann and Fraser, definitely keep an eye on them.
Kuhlmann, the leading hard runner, and he doesn't look to be in much trouble holding on to the 4 cars in front of him at the moment, following nicely and closely at this stage. So he sits nicely in P5, Fraser chasing P6. So it was a good start from Fraser, managing to get, as you said, his championship rival into the picture right in front of him. But 2 other drivers in mathematical contention of the championship are in front of both of them then. That is Spicer leading the race, Franek in P4 looking at Fleddy. The top 4 very, very close as DRS will be open for the first time in the race, and I think Spicer's going to be under pressure here. Louis going to pull out of the slipstream immediately, and Fleddy looking to follow through. Fleddy's got a great run, pulling to the outside, looking for the lead already. Fleddy draws alongside Louis, but backs out of it on the entry. Louis takes away the lead, and Spicer falls right down into position number 3. Not going to be too much of a concern because it is still so early in the race, but with the field running so close, that is the danger that you run. We said it is possible to pull out through the middle sector, but if you're in front by such a small margin heading into that straight and all those cars are on your bumper, you're going to be a bit powerless to defend that lead. And we saw, even with the aggression levels not being turned up just yet, we saw Spicer just being swamped down that straight with no defence.
Wow, great move from Fleddy, great opportunistic little flick there from him, and yeah, he's up to P2 now, which is where you want to be, but he'll know now that P3 is still a decent place to be. I didn't quite expect that. I thought the front 2 would be just swapping places and P3 would just be sitting back and watching, but clearly Fleddy has other ideas, and he's going to be looking to take the lead down into turn 1, but is he going to want the lead? That's the question on lap 3. You know, you want the lead on lap 29, but lap 3 maybe not. I'm sure he'll still take it, but he'll be looking over his shoulder on this next lap as Louis with the fastest lap. There goes Fleddy around the outside and takes the race lead, and Spicer gets through as well. So that could be the order of the day, Dake, by the looks of things. It might be just P1 getting passed by 2 and 3 each lap, unless Fleddy can build a gap here, which a bit of a mistake from Spicer there has allowed him to do so. But I'm sure Spicer will reel him back in this middle sector.
Yeah, well, that front position looking like a bit of a gauntlet at the moment. Very difficult to hold. And yeah, that is something we're going to have to keep an eye on throughout this race as to how that order of play is going to continue. As it stands, with the exception of Leonardo and Moy Cooley getting that illegal overtake penalty, it has been a fairly undramatic race for the majority of these drivers, as Leonardo looks like, yeah, he's had enough already. He was 50 seconds off the lead, give or take, but deciding he's had enough, and that means that one of our 6 contenders has been eliminated from contention. So Leonardo straight out in a right old mood, it looks like, and yeah, so Leonardo, sadly for him, that is the championship charge done, and we look forward to the other 5 drivers putting on a show, and all in decent enough position. But you'd have to say Finley in P9 didn't make gain off the start. He's not far behind his rivals, but he's certainly going to be wanting to make progress then as he hones in on Chris Rebel in front.
Yeah, Leonardo just a few missed races since when he led the standings actually at the halfway point of the season. A few missed races, a few less inspiring performances, and that is him now out of contention. Finley and Chris Rebel battling through turn 2. Finley forced a little bit wide by Chris Rebel. They still go side by side through turn 4 and down towards 5, but it's Finley who makes the move eventually up to P8, and crucially he has stayed within 1 second of Predestinato. That is the critical thing. If you're going to make a move, you've got to make sure you do it without losing the DRS to the next car, and Finley's done exactly that, and he's doing what he needs to do, making moves, keeping within the train, and staying in contention, because Finley, he's down to P3 in this championship now. He's 12 points behind Kuhlmann, so he really needs to at least finish ahead of Kuhlmann today to not give himself a mountain of work to do in the finale, even if he is still mathematically in it.
Still, though, that move on Chris Rebel, that sums up the tenacity that has defined Finley's season up to this point. And yeah, we'll see if he can find his way through Fraser, who is in P2 in the standings, of course, just 2 places further up the road. We complete the 5th tour of the Losail International Circuit with Fleddy establishing a stable lead at the moment, holding on in front from Spicer and Louis and Franek and Kuhlmann, with the championship contenders further in behind as Moikuli battling away with Chris Rebel this time. Chris Rebel finding himself trying to hang Moikuli out to dry out of turn number 1, and does so. Does manage to get a hold of that 9th place still, but Moikuli is charging after him. Sieb, Slash, Sviatek and Napel are tucked in behind as well. But you mentioned
contact.
As a contact, you say? What's going on?
Between Moikuli and Chris. Moikuli just braked a little too late into turn 5 and just tagged the back of Chris there and nearly sent himself round. Chris was fine, but Moikuli nearly paying the price for that. Second range of Predestinato, by the way. He's got to push to stay in that. He cannot afford to not have DRS on any lap, you have to think. But he is now pushing to get back in range. 7 tenths is now the gap, but he has had to use a bit of VRS to get there. But yeah, like you say, I think Fleddy seems to have the strongest race pace so far in this Grand Prix, but still a long way to go, Daka.
Yeah, well, the fact that he's able to at least maintain the lead is enough evidence of that. Spicer in behind him, though, and Spicer, you'd have to say, for the most part, is a very calculated driver. He's not going to go over-aggressive too soon. That's at least been the defining trait of his races up the front throughout this season, and towards turn 1 he gets close, but decides to yield, lifts off the throttle. He gets a bit of a tap from Louis Baptiste in the middle of turn number 1. Louis looking a bit more hard charging, trying to snatch away that P2. Gets a good run off of turn 3 and is tight in the slipstream, has a full battery, but he himself decides it's a bit too early to really get the elbows out at this stage. Kuhlmann starting to hone in on Franek now. I don't believe there is a big gap between the 2 tyres, as Finley picks up a time penalty. That could be so crucial. Of course, there may be plenty of other drivers that get penalties too over the course of this race, but that's 6.5 laps in, just out of turn 5, and Finley already a time penalty for track limits. Now, that is going to be a factor we're going to have to discuss. It's going to become more of a talking point, I imagine, the further we go into this race. But for Finley, especially with the field still so close at the moment, that is a setback that he can't really afford at this stage.
Yeah, there's definitely going to be plenty of those, but the question is who is going to get them. Finley definitely... we've seen him pick up a few track limits penalties, is all I'll say, this season. And I've seen him pick up plenty elsewhere as well, outside of PSGL. So he is one for them, but it is tough on this track to stay within the white lines. We saw it in qualifying. We're going to see it in the race. Slash gets one as well. But Kuhlmann and Fraser are the ones to watch. Are they going to get penalties as well, as Spicer now takes the lead once again of this race? Fleddy finally yielding, but he'll be reasonably confident after that strong positive stint at the front. A little bit of contact between them as they went through turn 2 and or turn 3 rather, and Spicer just about staying on the track, but they've got to be careful into these corners. Everyone's following each other so closely, and it just takes the driver in front braking or lifting off a little earlier than you expect, and it can be disastrous. So yeah, they've got to be a little careful here, and Spicer's got to be careful about lighting up his rears there. And
he's had a couple of those moments on this lap. That was what caused that little run-in between himself and Fleddy in turn 3. Had a bit of a moment in the middle of turn 2 of oversteer. That's a couple of snaps he's had on this lap. You mentioned that very aggressive driving style that he has. So maybe he just needs to bring it in, watch that right foot as he puts it down. Fleddy still following nicely in behind. The gap's certainly not opening up when he's the man in second place. Again, as you said, he looks so confident. But the question is, can he establish a consistent run away? He's so close behind Spicer. Look at this, heading through turn 16, and Louis right there as well. The top 3, barely nothing to separate them as Louis looks to go on the offensive too. Both he and Fleddy pull out of the slipstream with Spicer, and there's nothing Spicer can do to hold that one back. We saw how well Fleddy's defended that race lead when he's in front, but Spicer, when he gets to the front, maybe it's out of choice, I don't know. I don't think he wants to fall all the way down to third place, but Louis and Fleddy are able to come so close behind him that Spicer can't really do much to hold them back.
Yeah, he certainly can't, and those mediums are going to be starting to hurt a little bit more than the hards now, as Finley, we see now catching back up to this pack in front of him. He was always in DRS range, but he's now right behind Predestinato and was putting pressure on him down towards turn one. So Finley eager to get on the move, especially now with this track limits penalty he's got, and a little moment from Fraser just ahead of him will just make him feel even more buoyant in thinking that he can get a lot more out of this race than where he currently is. But he does have to deal with that penalty, and I think he's just going to have to hope that drivers ahead are also going to get penalties, because I don't think he's going to be able to extend any sort of gap. This is going to be a very DRS trainee race, and Finley, if he wants to be at the front of it, is going to have to just hope for some luck with track limits penalties for other drivers.
So a bit of a dummy pit stop then from Spicer out of that final corner. We're getting towards where you'd expect to see pit stops happening as Louis pulls out the slipstream. Oh, Fleddy going to go side by side in a turn one. Louis very, very late on the brakes. Takes away that race lead from IRT Fleddy, and Louis finally does have the head of the race here at Qatar. Fleddy slotting into second place and Spicer very, very closely in order behind that. Sviatek has come in at the end of lap 9, putting a set of the hard tyres on. That does seem a bit early. I was expecting around about lap 11 or 12 to see the first of the drivers getting off of those mediums.
Franek, Jashorny and Coolman just came to blows a little bit. Coolman looked to the inside, and then Franek made a move of his own to try and get past Spicer, and they both kind of psyched each other out, and they were weaving all over the track down towards turn 6. They got away with it, but things getting a little feisty out there, especially with those hard tyre runners wanting to get past, especially the likes of Coolman and Fraser, and now Finley as well, who has gotten past Predestinato. So these top three in the championship all together on track, all on the same tyre, with 4 ahead of them are going to be on worse tyres in the second stint. This is shaping up very, very nicely indeed.
The medium's starting to fade at this stage in the Grand Prix. Can Franek hold back Coolman, who is charging? He decides to not even fight that battle. He goes in fairly early on lap 10, just getting the car slowed down. He had it all locked up on the entry, and Franek does come in. Does he want to try and get an undercut on those top 3? Fleddy reclaims the race lead from Louis Baptiste, and well, you have to say with Franek, he didn't really have a look in on those top 3. He's looking to get that undercut. We saw Sviatek come in on the previous lap, the first driver to get off of those mediums and on to the hards at this stage. So I'd say for Franek, it could well be a good move. He may come under pressure later on in the race, but to get off those tyres, try and get those hards up to temperature quick, look for that undercut, and try and gain some track position on the 3 drivers that have held a very strong stranglehold on the front of this race so far.
One of the many things I really love about having such a close grid is being able to see which drivers favour certain tracks, because the likes of Fleddy and Louis, they've mostly been in the top half of the grid this season so far, but in the races that they've been in, but neither of them have been like clear front runners like they are today. So clearly they are big fans of Qatar, especially Fleddy, who I still think has the strongest race pace at the moment. He's
Look at him go.
Louis by nearly 8 tenths, over 8 tenths now into the final corner. And Louis is going to be wondering where on earth he's found all this pace from. And sometimes that can happen. You just have a driver who just kicks up a gear out of nowhere, and you just feel helpless behind them. And Louis might be feeling that at the moment. But Coolman getting past Spicer into P3 for the championship leader, and more moves, I think, is what he's going to want to make, and he's going to want to try and build a 1 second gap to Fraser. The more cars he can put between him and his nearest championship rival, the more chance he has of being out of DRS range when all the medium runners pit, and that's got to be in the forefront of his mind. So maybe we'll see him trying to make some moves to get up into the lead of this race before they do come in.
Ennelar Koolman, such a clinical driver, takes on Ennelar Spicer, gets through and now chasing down those front two. Bit of an oversteer moment from Fleddy. He does have great confidence around here, but he does have to be wary himself. Watch it then as Louis gets very close then. Fleddy trying to straighten up that car heading out of turn number 10. But Koolman's pace, you can see how much it's coming in. The hard tyres beginning to overwhelm that medium, and Fraser, you think, will try and follow him through as well. Finley, watch those title contenders, but look at Koolman. He was all over Louis then, heading through turn 12 and just coming under pressure from Spicer as he lost momentum. I think you're going to start to see medium runners diving to that pit lane. We've already seen Franek, Predestinato, Sviatek and Moikuli all getting off those tyres, and the top two, Julie, do come in. So this is the popular pit lap for the medium runners. All of them, every single one, coming into the pit lane. So they bring an end to that first stint, and the hard runners are now released to run their own race. So Koolman inherits the race lead as the rest of the drivers head into that pit lane. I did see a double stack. I think it was Spicer. I think Spicer's been held up in the pit lane. We know this pitfall of the F1 World Cars, and it looks like Ennelar Spicer, who is running up the front for so long, has fallen foul of that, I'm afraid. Is going to fall well down the train, even behind Sieb, as Franek's undercut. How well is it going to work? The answer is fairly well. It comes out ahead of Louis, still behind Fleddy, but Spicer, the big loser out of that pit lane, he's going to come out just in front of Sviatek, but ultimately an unfortunate tale of this season, really. Yet another driver on the receiving end of a double stack, courtesy of the F1 World Cars.
Yeah, and well, as Moikuli retires in the pit lane, we have seen plenty of that this season. Finley in particular has fallen foul of it quite a few times through no fault of his own. But yeah, Spicer just getting a bit unlucky there. In fact, very unlucky. He'll be thinking, what on earth are the odds of that? I only pitted with two cars in front of me, and somehow one of them was in my pit box. So very, very unlucky for Spicer. And I do wonder, we do have the top three in the championship now running 1, 2 and 3, which is fantastic, and in order as well, which is even better. But I do wonder, Finley, especially with his luck with double stacks this season, whether he's going to get unlucky again as Napple gets past Slash in the background. All these top six who started on the mediums have stayed with each other, to all of their credit. They've done very, very well, especially the likes of Chris Rebel, Napple and Slash, who have put themselves in this race by staying with those top three in the championship. So doing well so far. We're about at the halfway mark in this race, and well, the hard tyres, you've got to think they'll start thinking about coming in around about lap 15, maybe even this lap, and maybe as late as 16. But yeah, I do think they're not going to want to be undercut too much by the medium runners, so they've got to be tempted to pit soon-ish.
Yeah, I think so, because we have seen in the train how difficult overtaking can be. That said, maybe fresh mediums, how much of a difference could that make in the closing stages of this Grand Prix? Koolman is now pulling along that train of hard starters then. Fraser just keeping up, not really threatening a move at this stage, but I imagine that even though these guys are title rivals, the big priority for all of these drivers, I imagine, is going to be just getting to the pit stop in the quickest possible time more than anything, so they all have a fighting chance. Koolman made a bit of an error in that last corner, and that means he's under huge pressure. Look at this, as he's going to get swamped by his two title rivals. Fraser goes to the lead, Finley, Julie follows through, very nicely done, and Koolman, in the end, that mistake proving quite costly. And of course, it is not the end of the world for Ennelar Koolman, but he does have to relinquish that lead, and both of his title rivals going through. So Fraser now leads the Qatar Grand Prix and is pulling along that train of hard runners. Fleddy behind that gap we're going to have to look out for as Louis passes Franek. Franek was barely in DRS range of the net race leader IRT Fleddy when he came out of the pits, but with 2 lap older tyres and Fleddy's phenomenal race pace, he wasn't able to hold on. Louis has now made that move. He lost a bit of time to Fleddy in the pit phase, and now very important laps coming up for both Louis and Franek to make sure that gap stays under control and they cannot allow Fleddy to go up the road. But we've seen now that Fleddy has that clean air. He's got such great pace. This is the break he was looking for through the pit phases. IRT Fleddy now is going to be on the charge, and I imagine a very difficult man to bring back.
Absolutely. I think he is the favourite for this race win now that he's pulled out that gap to Louis and Franek. 1.7 seconds, and it is growing. 1.8, 1.9 as they go through the final sector. This is fantastic stuff from Fleddy. He's doing exactly what he needs to do, and he is a very scary opponent now in this race. Slash out in the pits. He's retired in the pit lane as the top 5 go wheel to wheel through turn 1. Napple had to take avoiding action there as they were nearly 3 wide into the corner. Finley has taken the race lead from Fraser. Coolman still sitting down there in P3. He'll be happy with where he is at the moment, but Chris Rebel, Napple and Coolman nearly all coming to blows there, and Slash as well, I think. I don't know why Slash has retired. Maybe there was contact, I'm not sure, but he will take no further part in this after a very strong first stint, so that is unfortunate.
Slash bowing out of the Qatar Grand Prix just past half distance, so unlucky for him, I'm afraid. The top 5 still remaining in flying formation as it stands right now, with Finley, as you said, now leading it. Fleddy's gap to Napple in P5 has come down by a couple of seconds since the pit phase. He's now 18.5 seconds off of Napple. And I believe 19.5 seconds just off the race lead. That's how close these top 5 guys are running. Finley now pulling them along. Are we going to see pit stops at this stage? At lap 16, you'd have to say that pit window is well and truly open for the hard runners going onto the mediums, and Finley is going to follow suit. He does go into the pit lane. The other 4, to my surprise anyway, deciding to stay out, with Fraser still pulling them along now. Of course, getting his own back boost of DRS down the straight as Napple attacks Chris Rebel on the outside of turn number 1. Chris Rebel stays in it with late braking, and they touch on the exit, and Napple gets all crossed up then with that front wheel to side pod contact. Napple trying to hang it all the way around the outside, did not come off, has to yield and goes back into 4th place. But what of EVE Finley now? He's still on that pit limiter. It's an agonising wait before he can get on that throttle pedal. There he goes, squirming the rear tyres as he emerges from the pit lane, and is going to be P10. He's going to come out between Sieb and Spicer, so that is some work to do for EVE Finley. But the question is now, what is the delta of those fresh mediums? Sieb in front of him with 4 lap older tyres. I think the good news for Finley and the rest of these hard starters is that because of the pit phase and the fact that these medium starters have been broken up through the pits, you see gaps appearing between them. It does mean that overtaking for these guys that are going to be going onto the mediums could be a little bit easier as Finley looks to get started now chasing down Sieb.
Yeah, the time difference between the old hards and those fresh hards is phenomenal. All of the fresh hards are doing mid-24 lap times, and then the top runners are doing mid-25s, even 26s without DRS. Finley gets past Sieb, who makes a big mistake, but it did cost him a couple tenths. Fraser in, but Coolman and Napple also in. Coolman and Chris Rebel staying out another lap. And could this really cost them here? I was talking about DRS trains in this race and how strategy wasn't really that big of a deal, but it could well turn out to be a big deal, depending on where Fraser and Napple come out now. They had 1 more lap on those hards than Finley. Where is Finley? He's coming down towards turn 1. He's got Sieb just behind him. They're not going to fight, but Finley is well ahead. It's just over a second, I would have thought. Fraser fighting with Spicer on the exit of turn 1 as well, but Fraser just about staying ahead, and yeah, it's just about 9 tenths between Fraser and Finley, so he has stayed in that range. But Coolman and Chris Rebel are going to be under a lot of pressure now, particularly Coolman. He needs an excellent in-lap, but I fear that he has left this a little too late.
Yeah, that undercut, fresh medium to old hard, so powerful. Fraser, though, if he can get past Sieb, but it looks like he's going to do so quickly. Now down there at turn 7, that's a very, very important move for CPI Fraser, because he stays within range of EVE Finley, who is coming up behind Predestinato and maybe just about struggling to get that move done. He's having to cope with a little bit of dirty air, what little of it is in this game. So Fraser staying with Finley, that's a big advantage in his favour, as Coolman and Chris Rebel predictably come in at the end of lap number 18. But is it too little too late, as you thought? Let's see where they are going to emerge. Onto the mediums goes Kuhlmann, likewise with Chris Rebel, who's trying to chase him down. Fleddy will jump these guys considerably, and he looks to be firmly in control of this Qatar Grand Prix. As for the other championship contenders, Finlay picking up a slipstream on Predestinator. He wants a car between himself and Fraser and the pursuing Kuhlmann. He's going to do just that. Sweeps into position number 4 and gets in front of Predestinato. Fraser's going to have to deal with him now. And look at where Kuhlmann and Chris Rebel are. Right at the rear of the train. Kuhlmann comes out P11 behind Zviadek, behind Napel, who's pitted off of the hards and onto the mediums a lap earlier. He was out there. He was leading the race a number of laps ago, but what you feared may have come to pass here as Enlar Kuhlmann. He's going to have to do another overtaking showcase like he did in Spa in the early laps, because look at the distance that Fraser and Finlay have put into him. That's so much work to do for our championship leader now.
Absolutely disastrous strategy call from the championship leader. He's got Zviadek just ahead, who's losing the rear through turn 8 there, and Kuhlmann just behind, but he can't make the move. He's got to get a good exit here to try and get it into the three right-handers, but no, Zviadek gets good enough, and Kuhlmann in a lot of trouble here with several cars between him and his championship rivals. Louis Baptiste, by the way, got himself a track limits penalty, so that's good news for Finlay, who's going to want to get himself on the podium here, but he's got Fraser just behind still. Predestinato the car between them, but Fraser will be comfortably in range of Finlay once he gets past on this straight. Finlay does set the fastest lap, but I'm wondering how long that's going to hold. Kuhlmann makes his way past Zviadek, but he's got a lot more work to do. 5 cars between him and Fraser, and I think he's given himself too much to do here. There's 10 laps to go. Those mediums are going to be very, very good, but they will tail off in the last couple laps. Whether they'll tail off enough for the already aging hards to be equalized is another question entirely, as Louis gets 6 seconds now of track limits penalties within 2 laps after not having any for the first 18. But Fleddy now 2.9 seconds in front and looks like he's going to dominate this race. But Finlay and Fraser are going to want to chase him down, and there's still plenty of time to do so.
Plenty of laps, but that is quite an advantage for RT Fleddy. Once he got that little bit of clean air, his pace has been simply phenomenal. RT Fleddy pulling clear. Napel gets through on Seep, heading in to turn number 12, slotting his way into position number 7, and Seep falling back on those hards. Spicer and Kuhlmann in behind then. Can Kuhlmann, what can he make of this now as Spicer just in front of him picks up a time penalty? That's 6 seconds for Louis though. With the field running so close, he would actually finish behind Chris Rebel, who currently runs last on the road. Finlay though moving up as Franek moves past Louis Baptiste, and Finlay's going to follow through, getting up in front of Louis Baptiste very crucially. Can he find a way past Franek to Shawnee too? Can he put more cars between himself and CPI Fraser, try and break the DRS and make it a question of clean air pace? EVA Finlay, he started down the field, he's had a great drive up to this point, but what can he make of it? Up behind Franek to Shawnee, looking for a way through towards the end of this Qatar Grand Prix. The stage is set. Here comes Fraser. Fraser lunges in towards turn number 6, drawing level with Louis, who has slipped all the way back on this 21st lap. He tries to hold it down the outside of turn number 7. Fraser squeezed right to the outer regions of the track. They make contact. Fraser hung out to dry on the outside, but he stays in it inside now of turn number 10, and he's gonna get the move done. Louis made it so difficult for him, and now Finlay on the attack once again, breezes past Franek to Shawnee, heading in to turn number 11. That was very, very important for EVE Finlay, but is he going to be under more pressure down the straight, because Franek is going to be able to stay with him through these corners, and Fraser still right there with him. These two have been so clinical, so impressive with their moves, but as good as Finlay has been, he has not been able to shake off CPI Fraser, and he's going to be under pressure down this main straight.
Exceptionally brave overtake by Fraser, and it's looking like an important one. He's going to get past Franek Jashawney as he down towards turn 1. Kuhlmann setting the fastest lap further back. He has been making moves. He's up to P7 now as he continues to try and get his way further up the grid, and you can see him in the background of shot. He's not that far behind, but it's still a lot of work for him to do, as Franek now and Louis Baptiste fighting over P4. Franek on the inside for turn 5, and he's made the move stick just about, but Louis still hanging on in there. And, well, Predestinato in DRS range, which means Coolman is in this train now, finally, and is back in with a shout. But he's got to keep it clean. He's got to save his ERS, and he's got to play this cleverly. There's still 7.5 laps left to go, but he will quickly find those ticking down if he doesn't start making moves, more moves, and quickly. Here he goes, a brilliant exit rather on that left-hander, and he gets past Predestinato into the triple right, and up to P6 he goes. Brilliant stuff from the championship leader, and he's trying to fight his way back into contention for the podium here, and he is indeed in that contention because of Finley's 3-second penalty. I think he would be perfectly content with finishing P3 if Fraser got P2 here, but they are catching Fleddy. Fleddy's last lap, a 24.4. Finley and Fraser's last laps, 23.6 for Fraser and a 24.1 for Finley. They are catching him, and fast. This is not over.
May not be. Here comes CPI Fraser. How many times have we uttered that phrase throughout this season? Within 3 seconds now of RT Fleddy, and of course we don't know the warning situation exactly, but any one of these drivers, even the ones that don't have penalties, could be under threat. But that gap is being slashed. Look at this, 2.5 seconds now. Fraser, could it be yet another one for the man who actually in the chat before this race was saying how much he disliked that track? Finley is just going to try and stay with him at this stage. He's got quite a lot of battery to use, and he cannot afford to get another penalty, that is for sure. None of these drivers can, though, it must be said. NLR Koolman now up behind Louis Baptiste. Frantic Deshaugney, the next man up the road. I think if he does get into P4, again, I do think he would be content with that, but Frantic has lost the DRS to the two medium runners. You think with his old tyres, not a whole lot that he can do about that. Just being distanced by drivers on a superior strategy at this stage. So Frantic falling back has Louis for company, but Louis with 6 seconds of penalties probably not a factor for the final results. NLR Koolman though has to get these moves done and get them done soon, while his still relatively fresh medium tyres are near their best. So heading out of the final corner, Louis immediately pulls out the slipstream of Frantic, and here comes the slipstream from Koolman. Koolman draws a level with Louis Baptiste down the main straight and following him to Napple. Napple gets alongside and Koolman into turn 1 side by side on the inside line. It would be unthinkable for Napple to get 3 in 1, but Koolman does not yield. He stays with it on the inside of turn number 2, holds on to P4. What a run that was from Napple, slotting in right in behind the championship leader. But Koolman, critical moves done for him. He was a bit of a nervous moment with Napple surging through, but he gets into P4 now, and he is staring down his two title rivals who continue to chip away at Fleddy's advantage.
Absolutely fantastic racing between all 4 of those drivers, but at what cost to Koolman? Look at his ERS. He's pretty low now, and those top 2 ahead of him pretty comfortable at this stage. Or, well, not top 2, but Fraser and Finley, his 2 rivals. So Koolman, he needs to get in DRS range and then he can save, but it's not going to do it. 1.2 seconds, and Finley's going to know if he keeps Koolman out of range here, then Koolman's going to be very vulnerable to the cars behind. Viaduct. Spicer is
safety
out.
Car.
Spicer's out. It's a safety car. Safety car in the last few laps of this race. It's brilliant news for Koolman. Horrible news for EVE Finley, because that penalty is going to be all the more important. Everyone's going to be in for the soft. Oh, Fleddy, 10-second penalty, and suddenly the race for the lead is what? Oh, and Napple's done a Vettel. Napple has Vetteled Koolman into the pit lane. He's got to P4. Incredible move from Napple. Koolman just was not expecting it at all. Is anyone going to get double stacked here? A couple people maybe. Fleddy's fine. Fraser and Finley are fine. Koolman and Napple have got out on it fine. So all the top 5 are okay. But huge drama at the end here. Spicer out the race despite his support in the YouTube chat. But Fleddy with a 10-second penalty for speeding. He is going to be absolutely devastated. It's such an avoidable mistake in a race that he was looking like he was going to dominate all the way to the end. The mediums were falling off. and suddenly he is looking like he might not even score points from this one after all is said and done. And Finley in particular is going to fall down a ton of positions if it ends right now. There's still several laps to go once the safety car comes in, but it's tough times for Fleddy, tough times for Finley, and fantastic times for Fraser, who, like you said he was not very good at this track. And here he is, I would say the favourite now to win this race.
He is in pole position to take home this race when surely now IRT Fleddy, you have to feel for him, but you'd have to say under not much pressure at that stage in the race. The field was going to be compressed. You don't have to send it into the pit lane, and IRT Fleddy, that will serve as a big dose of heartbreak for the man who has dominated this Qatar Grand Prix up to this point. So that does put CPI Fraser in prime position. Napple, what a race it's turned out to be for him now. As you mentioned, that incredible move into the pit entry on Kuhlmann, snatching up that fourth position, and with penalties, that is a net P2 at this stage. Incredible stuff for Napple. What can he make of this? He has just the one podium this season from the Spanish Grand Prix. It's looking like another at this stage as he puts the championship leader behind him on the circuit. We will get another lap behind the safety car, so a chance for us to calm down, a bit of a calm before the inevitable storm in front of us, Ghost. But Fleddy, he is going to control this restart, or no, he is not going to control this restart. He goes right into the pit lane, I imagine, to serve that penalty.
Yeah.
So it's probably, well, at the very least, he'll not have that penalty, but I don't know how much it's really going to improve his race situation. He's still going to be at the back. At the very least, though, you could say, with Finley's penalty, with Louis' 3 penalties at this point, and with Sieb's penalty, it could serve for him to still come away with some points from this Qatar Grand Prix. So Fraser will be at the front controlling the restart, and Finley, well, you would say he wants to try and minimise the effects of that penalty. I imagine there's that devil on the shoulder that's saying he needs to try and just mess up Fraser's race from this position, fairly of course, just to try and put Fraser under more pressure and keep that points gain away, or maybe just force Fraser into any sort of error. But I imagine that's going to be the game for Finley, who has to be thinking about the championship at this stage. Well, how do you manage this with that time penalty with all the cars bunched up?
I think Fleddy has made the right decision there, as long as the safety car doesn't leave him behind, which it shouldn't do, because otherwise he's just looking at P11 pretty much guaranteed. So you might as well come in and get the penalty out of the way, and then just try in the last couple of laps to make up the time. But yeah, Finley, there's not really much he can do, Daka. He's just got to do his best and hope that some carnage happens, hope that more penalties come on the table. Kuhlmann's got 2 warnings, Fraser's got 1, so he's not in too much trouble. But with just a few laps of green flags on the soft tyres, with everyone battling for the win, those warnings can come very, very quickly. Safety car is in this lap. We're going to get 3 laps of green flag racing. And to answer someone in the comments, how did Spicer crash? I don't know. He's crashed at the exit of one of the really fast flat-out right-handers, so perhaps there was some contact between him and another driver. That's what I would imagine, and it sent him spinning round into the wall. But yeah, a bit of an odd one for Spicer, that. But yeah, we've now got to focus on these last couple of laps, or last 3 laps under green flag. Safety car into the pit lane, and Fraser can go whenever he likes.
He sits with Finley almost alongside him and on a bit of a different line. Fraser, I don't think he's going to go just yet before that final corner. I think he's going to roll it on for some time longer. Finley tucked in behind needs a very, very strong reaction time then. When Fraser decides to get on it, they straighten up the cars. They almost touch. Look at how close they are. Finley is not looking to give anything away as Fraser gets onto it. Plants that throttle pedal and away he goes. CPI Fraser at the front of this race. Great restart for Coolman, who's picked up a good slipstream on Napple towards turn number 1, but Napple is going to resist that, blipping that overtake button and holding on to that third position. And Predestinato picks up a penalty. Watch for more of those in these last couple of laps. As Ghost mentioned, it can be such a threat to all of these drivers then, as we are inside the final 3 laps of the Qatar Grand Prix. Everyone has gone through the restart besides the penalty for Predestinato without much drama, with Fraser leading and pulling clear. He's making a big effort here to try and put this race to bed on lap 27 and 29. He's burning that overtake button. He's 3/4 of a second up on Finlay. Of course, there's no tyre advantage either way, but Finlay's going to have to work hard to stay with CPI Fraser, who's trying to make a break for it. The rest of the drivers filter in relatively cleanly then, looking for more overtaking opportunities on the next couple of laps. Are we going to see do or die moves? We've seen Fleddy throw one at the inside of Sebe, and Sebe actually losing places as he made another error down there at turn 10, falls back to P11, and you sense that may be the end of his competition in this race for high points. But Fraser, he continues to lead away, 6/10 clear of Finlay, but they can see them all spreading out, and at the moment Fraser doesn't seem to be under much threat. He's had a superb first lap here with 2 to go at Qatar.
Yeah, Chris Rebel on the mediums is doing decently in this sea of soft tyres. Fraser with the fastest lap as he tries to pull away from Finlay. 2 laps to go now. DRS enabled, and it will be on for the final lap only, as Fraser a little bit too much on the inside of turn 1. Cost him a couple hundredths maybe. But yeah, Sebe now well out of the points as Napple, the next one to get a penalty. And that promotes Coolman into a net P2. And I think if Fraser is going to win this race, Coolman will be pretty happy with P2. He'll retain a 5-point championship lead, although the fastest lap might cut it down to 4 if Fraser gets that as well. But Coolman in a good position here. He just needs to keep it within the white lines and he will secure P2, but it's not over yet. Finley's going to have the DRS. Fraser could drop potentially 2 positions. We've seen it several times already this race where the race leader gets swamped by both cars behind into turn 1, and suddenly that would mean Coolman would be right behind him and they'd be battling for the race lead. It's a potential 8-point swing with the finale coming up next week, and Coolman, if he spots an opportunity to make a move on the last lap on his main championship rival, he is definitely going to send it. Here we go, round the final corner and onto the last lap. Can Fraser hold on to at least P2 here on track, or will he be swamped by Napple and be under threat from his rival Coolman? Finley takes the lead. Here comes Napple down to turn 1, but he's not close enough, and Fraser keeps P2. Huge moment for Fraser there to keep this race lead in net purposes anyway.
Battling behind then, Louis Baptiste and Chris Rebel. Chris Rebel desperately trying to hold on to P5 on the road. There's a podium at stake for him. Louis drawing alongside, hitting into turn number 4. Gets in front, gets through. Chris Rebel backs out, but it's Franek who's really the big danger from behind with no penalties as Louis gets yet another penalty. That's 12 seconds to his name. Finley kicks out the rear end, heading out of turn number 7, and Fraser did hang on. Napple did not have the battery to make much further impression, so is this going to be as it ends? There's still dueling back then. Fleddy going spearing off. He was side by side with Franek to Shorney, and as that come to blows, Freddie immediately retires from the race. What was looking like a dream result for him has turned out to be a worse nightmare. He retires and it will be P11 in the classification for him. We are inside the final couple of corners now with Finley leading Fraser. Fraser, all he has to do is keep it on the track and another race win. His 4th in a row. His 5 and 6th races will be there ahead of the finale in Brazil. Finley, he wants to win this one on track, and he may well just do so as they head up towards the lane at Qatar. Finley crosses the line first, gets the fastest lap, but Fraser wins it. 2nd to Coolman, 3rd to Chris Rebel, remarkably, as we bring an end to the penultimate round of the season, and a barnstorming finale that was. Somehow CPI Fraser once again, I cannot understand how that man does it. Again and again, time after time, he takes away the race win. And you'd have to say, given the circumstances, though, a very, very fine second place for Enlar Koman. Next up, Chris Rebel. Wow. I mean, he has been here the entire season, has only missed one race, and is finally rewarded with a first visit to the rostrum, Finley. How costly will that time penalty prove to be in the grand scheme of things? He does grab the fastest lap, which could be very, very crucial in the points with things so close. But he comes through it in fourth from Franek in P5. Sadly for Franek, he is also going to be eliminated from title contention, as well Spicer. So we are going to have a three-way fight ahead of the final round of the season. Or actually, I just want to make sure, yes, Finley will just about, I think, still be in contention. Sviatek, or Napol in P6 out of Sviatek, then Predestinato, Sieb and Louis, only 10 finishers in this Qatar Grand Prix. Penalties did play quite a role, as we expected. Then Fleddy, Spicer, Slash, Moikuli and Leonardo are the final results. So Fraser, wow, that man, once again, it's getting a little bit repetitive, but it is anything but dominant for CPI Fraser. He is simply just the most clinical driver at the moment, makes the right moves, doesn't make the mistakes, and in the end, you'd have to say that is what has defined that race win at Qatar. He didn't falter while his rivals did.
Everything is just going right for Fraser at the moment, and that is what you need. When he was so far behind in the championship standings just 4 or 5 weeks ago, suddenly here he is, just 5 points behind Kuhlmann going into the final race of the season. But Kuhlmann will at least have the peace of mind in some way that if next week's finale ends the same way as this one, with Fraser P1 and Kuhlmann P2, he will take the title by 1 point. So as long as he finishes in second place and Fraser doesn't get the fastest lap and win the race, then Kuhlmann will be able to take the title. So that's going to be his aim next week, but all the pressure on him. Finley is 15 points behind. Pre-stewards, of course, we'll update you with that next week if there are any changes. There weren't from last week. But Finley, he needs a race win next week, and he needs Kuhlmann to DNF, and he needs Fraser to have a bad race, which, given that's the guy who's won the last 4 races on the trot, that's quite a tall order. So Finley, he needs a bit of a miracle here, but at least he'll know that he's got nothing to lose and he can absolutely send moves if need be. So at least there's the sort of peace of mind in that respect. He doesn't have to sort of back off at points to try and, because he got the championship on the line and all that. He knows it's all nothing to lose, all to play for, might as well go for it. So I expect Finley to light up that track next week. But yeah, what a finale we have in store.
Yeah, I echo those sentiments exactly. Just to clear up, Ghost has already said most of the story. I will just say Koman is on 93 points, Fraser is on 88 points, and Finley is on 78 points ahead of that title showdown in Interlagos. And well, it's a track that both in the real-life Formula One and in various other leagues has served as a venue for some of the most incredible showdowns I have ever seen, with, well, races that unfold in ways that you just cannot predict. So, well, that has been the story of much of this season too. So I cannot wait for how that's going to unfold. But yeah, Kuhlmann managing to preserve that title lead ahead of Fraser by just 5 points. Finley on the outside looking in, as you said, he is going to have to rely on implosions from the top two, really, to be able to make that work. Of course, we are going to have to keep an eye out on the pole position point and the fastest lap point as well, with just a 5-point gap between the top two. That is going to make all the difference. And Ghost has promised me that he will work up a bit of title permutations for those top 3 guys, so we can present them to you guys with full clarity. And it means that as soon as the race ends, we will know who your champion will be. And well, Ghost, I'll come to you just before we wrap it up, because well, I think our moods probably reflect each other heading into this final round. The excitement is just palpable with one race left to go.
It absolutely is. And you know what, Daka? It could be even more palpable. I'm just looking at some of the chat in what I like to call the paddock, but it's the Discord. Slash's DNF was due to controller drift mid-race. So he had
Oh,
to come in and retire, so that's a shame for him. Spicer, we were theorizing, because it was a weird place for him to DNF. His wheel just left him, so he just went straight into the wall. Um, so that was the story of those two DNFs. But the more interesting thing is, do you remember when Finley and Chris Rebel were battling it out in the first stint through Sector One? And I briefly mentioned Chris forces Finley off the track a little, or something like that. Uh, Finley only had 3 warnings.
oh,
Uh, so if that was a warning, if he gets that removed, suddenly this is looking very, very different. Finley would win the race. I'll just run you quickly through what the championship standings would be if he gets that penalty removed. And it would be, by the way, the top 3 in the championship in reverse order on the podium, which would be brilliant. But it would be Finley on 85 points. Fraser would be on 84 points, and Kuhlmann would be on 91 points. So it would be 8 points between the top 3, which that now would look a lot more interesting. A bigger gap between Kuhlmann and Fraser, so Kuhlmann would be allowed to take it a little more safely. But even so, that would mean both Fraser and Finley would be lighting up the track, trying their best to fight each other and not only Kuhlmann. So, yeah, from a neutral point of view, if Finley gets that penalty removed, then this finale is going to be exceptionally exciting.
yeah, just a quick correction. That would actually put him on 86 points, not 85, because he did also get
86
the
points. Yes,
fastest
he
lap as
did.
well. So
Yeah,
even
yeah.
more so. Wow, that would be quite a spectacle ahead of the race. And well, I'm not allowed to be biased. That would him getting the penalty removed, and it does come down to fairness. It's as the stewards do decide to clarify it, but I think that is a much more appetising set towards that final round. But we'll have to bide our time, and we will update you on that situation as soon as it is cleared up. Could be the most important stewards inquiry of the season, unless there's even more drama to come in the final round. We shall see. But that is 11 of 12 rounds in the books, and we look forward to the season finale at, well, where else to hold it? Interlagos. It is going to be a stunner, and I cannot emphasize this enough. Make sure not to miss it. The championship of PSF3 is coming down to the wire. Just before we close up, I'll give a quick thank you to our sponsors yet again, GT Omega and SRC. Check out the descriptions and visit their sites. They do absolutely wonderful stuff, and they are the reason we're able to put this race forward for all of you guys to watch. But I think that is going to just about wrap up everything for an absorbing Qatar Grand Prix. 11 down, 1 to go. My oh my. I am looking forward to it. Let's see how things are going to unfold. But I think with just about everything said and done for the Qatar Grand Prix NPSF 3 Season 37, from myself and Ghost, it is goodbye for now. And until next time, we'll see you later.